All right, everyone. That was my moment of being grumpy, pouting for myself. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 6 recap. This week, another slate of excellent matchups. Fortunately, we had some closer matchups. Maybe not so much fun to watch, though, as always. I always say this, and I always have to chime in because I always talk about other people's teams whenever they have close matchups, and I always have to say, even when I'm involved, I'll be a good sport about it, even if I'm on the wrong end of one of those, and I'm going to be a good sport about it here because that is the position I am in this week, and I will spare you from going into too much detail about stuff that you probably don't even care about anyway. So, like I said with the matchups, unlike last week, we had some close matchups, so it was pretty, for the most part, fun to watch. A couple surprises, I think, maybe one or two. And, yeah, let's just dive right into it. How about that? As always, we start with the defending champion. That was Yinzer Jags, going up against one of the Huber brothers, trying to be, once again, a Huber Slayer, but unsuccessful, so it's probably best that name is left in the past, as Jay takes this one down. Final score here, 210.6 to 184.4. So much like Disco for Yinzer Jags, putting up good scores all year long, but those big scores just aren't translating into victories. When you go against somebody who scores over 200, there's not too much you can do about that, even though you put up a big score. That's just the nature of the beast. Now that we are playing all scoring counts and stuff like that, the average scores have shot up, and Jay's team, 10 XL entries, has really been on a roll so far this year. So let's dive right into this matchup. 10 XL entries. Deshaun Watson, 60 points. Michael Thomas, 17. Adam Thielen, 17.5. Will Fuller, 9.5 after his 90.5 last week, something like that. Yeah, Watson and Fuller this week only combining for about 70 points there. So at least giving Matt a chance at this one. James Conner, 31 points. Sony Michel, 13.5. Greg Olsen, just over 9. Golden Tate in your flex. I think it was his second game back from his suspension for the Giants there. Had to think a minute for which team Golden Tate plays for now, because he's bounced around a little bit the last 2 years or so. 22.2. Your kicker, Mason Crosby, on Monday night. Yahoo says 11. I think it was about 12.5, actually, if I think back to last night. Because you had, let's see. Jay actually had the Packers kicker and the Packers defense on Monday night. And let me take a quick look at my notes here. And actually, Yinzer Jags was ahead by about 5 points or so. 4.5, something like that. But he said he had the Packers kicker and the Packers defense. Crosby got you about 12.5, and the Packers defense, I believe, got you about 18. So more than enough to jump you from, you had 179.8, and you jumped up to 210.6. So maybe you were worried a little bit there about the, but with those two players there, should have been pretty easily able to cover 5 points there. And fortunately for you, you were able to. Unfortunately for Matt, you were able to. Let's take a look at his lineup. Once again, Kyler Murray going for, 62.2. One of the interesting things about this matchup, just taking a look at it on the screen here, is a lot of your scores were pretty close to each other. So Watson had 60.2, Murray had 62.2, Thomas had 16.9, Hopkins 16.5, so pretty close there. Let's see. Connor had 31. Freeman actually had a good game, 27 points. Sony Michel and James White, the two Patriots running backs going up against each other. Said Michel had 13.3. James White had 13.5. So yeah, a bunch of your scores were pretty close there. Your kickers were pretty even. So the difference makers here were obviously, let's see. I think it was the defense. I don't think Dallas did too well. Golden Tate, definitely a factor here. And I think Jay's receivers, Thielen chipping in, getting a touchdown. Unfortunately for Matt, you had two wide receivers put up single-digit scores there. And that was probably one of the main factors in this matchup here. And even though Kittle doubled up Jay's tight end there on this score, yeah, it wasn't enough. I think the defense was probably Golden Tate and your defense were the big factors here. Anyway, let's run down Matt's actual lineup here real quick, since we already mentioned a bunch of them. Hopkins, 16.5. Keenan Allen, 5.5. Robert Woods, 7.5. It looks like Robert Woods' rushing touchdown. I only see rushing stats here. I think his rushing touchdown was 8 yards or something like that. I don't think it was 6. I'm seeing him as having 16 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown. So Robert Woods did no receiving stats in this game. Kind of strange, but that was a very strange game, considering how the Rams pretty much disappeared. Their offense disappeared after the first drive of the game. Yes, so he ended up with 7.6. Freeman, 20, just under 27. Excuse me. James White, 13.5. Kittle, 18.5. Breida in the flex, 10.5. Justin Tucker, about 13 or so. And Yahoo says 8 for the Dallas defense. I don't think you had any bonus. The only long touchdown bonus this week was Darnold. He was the only one in the starting lineup there. You would have had one if you had had Robbie Anderson in, but really no reason to plug him in unless you were pretty confident that he was going to perform, because your starting lineup pretty solid. I don't think you really changed it much at all this year, except for when you had some bye weeks there for the 49ers. You must have said Dallas had 8 on Yahoo. Their actual score must have been 11, I'm going to guess, judging by how much we had bumped up your score. Not too much there. But yeah, said once again for Yinzer Jags, a disappointing matchup as his opponent goes over 200 points. With the victory, 10 XL entries, moves up to 4-2. He is in 5th place, while Yinzer Jags drops to 2-4. He is in 9th place. Next up, we have 1st place Mighty Midgets going up against, I think he was solo in 1st place last week. Shawshank Athletics were trying to knock him down a peg. He did get the win, but unfortunately I don't believe he knocked him down from 1st place. Let's see. Shawshank Athletics said getting the win here. 209.15 to 164.3. Let's take a look at Shawshank. He had Russell Wilson go for 55. Amari Cooper could have been a factor here. Impressive that you still went over 200, despite Cooper having 1 catch for 3 yards and then going out of the game with an injury. Here Tyler Boyd, only 4 points, but the rest of your scores here look pretty good the rest of the way down. I see Crowder, 15.8. Fournette, 17.8. Nick Chubb, just under 32. Over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. Tight end, Mark Andrews, just under 14. Zeke in the flex, just over 29. Over 100 yards and a touchdown for him. Couple catches. Sly, your kicker, Yahoo says 12. Probably about 13 or so. And then the Baltimore Ravens defense, Yahoo says 11. but we bumped up your score, looks like about 18. So they must have been close to 30 there for you. So about 85 points or so from your quarterback and your receiver. Said Chubb chipping in some good scores there. Zeke and Crowder leading the way. Fournette, Chubb, and Elliott. Said Elliott earlier in the season thinks that he was actually kind of the weak link surprisingly, of your running back trio there. But they started to pick things up as the season has gone on. I know a lot of people talk about Brian's running back trio there, but it's pretty stiff competition here. Fournette, Chubb, and Zeke. Both of those trios are going to be significant, I think, going forward, especially as we get deeper into the season. We get closer to playoffs, and the weather starts to change. Offenses start to change. You're going to be in pretty good shape, I think, moving forward with that trio there. Fortunately for you, instead landing that number 2 pick in the draft and getting Zeke there. All right, let's take a look here at Mighty Midgets. So he was in first place going into this week. He did lose the matchup, but fortunately for him, he did not fall from first place. He is still there, resting comfortably, at least for now. Let's take a look at him. Matt Ryan, another big game, 67.5 points. I think I said last week, he's pretty much been over 50 every single week. And yeah, he puts up another 67. Probably pretty much carrying Mighty Midgets on his back. A lot of looks like you had actually, I see Mighty Midgets had 2 zeros here this week. We'll get to them. His receiver trio, Courtland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, and what's his name? Demarcus Robinson. Sutton, 11.5. Ridley, 14.8. And then one of your zeros from Robinson there. Running backs, Kamara and Carson. I think Kamara was playing with an injury to his ankle. He was questionable. They're not sure if he's going to be playing this week. Looks like he might have a problem there. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure they're going to hold him out of practice, see how that goes. Still, he had 7 catches on a bad ankle. Got you 13.5 points. Carson made up for it by getting you 29 points. And then, as we all know, I think Disley, the promising-looking tight end from the Seahawks there, he scored you 0. He went out with a non-contact injury. I believe he is, I think it was an Achilles. Looks like they haven't changed his profile to out or IR yet, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be going on IR and is probably done for the season. Take a quick look at his info here. Don't see any news as of right now. It's almost midnight here. They haven't updated any specifics on his injury, but they believe it is an Achilles there. So, unfortunately for Mighty Midgets, that's a significant loss there for him going forward. Eckler in the flex, only 6 points. Butker, your kicker, 6.5 or so. And then the Tennessee Titans defense. They actually got shut out. Yahoo says 10. Looks like your score is only bumped up about 6 points. So even in defeat, I think they actually did okay. Didn't give up a whole lot of points or yards there against Denver. So your score must have been about 16 there for the Tennessee Titans defense. But yeah, those 2 zeros, even though Matt Ryan did pretty good for you. 2 zeros, kind of disappointment there from Kamara, but playing injured. Probably hoping for a little bit more from your Matt Ryan to Calvin Ridley connection there. He did have a touchdown, but only 4 for 48 there. Only 4 of, I see, Matt Ryan's 30 completions went to Calvin Ridley. So you're probably hoping for a little bit more there down the line. So losing Disley, we'll see how that affects you. Eckler being less of a factor in the Chargers running game and perhaps passing game there. We will see how that affects you going down the road. And as everybody else chases you down and tries to knock you down from that top spot here. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Like I said, with this win, Shawshank Athletics, he moves up to 4-2, while Mighty Midgets fall to 4-2. Although again, Midgets are still in first place, while Shawshank Athletics move to 4th place. Alright, then we had Hillbillies on PCP going up against Dark Wing Jut, as Dirt McGirt is officially dead, and perhaps Hillbillies on PCP putting a stake in the heart of Darkwing Duck this week, dropping him to 1-5, getting the victory here, just under 200 points. Hillbillies on PCP goes for 199.6, and Darkwing Jut, I see 148.1. For Hillbillies, he went with Jameis Winston. Talked a little bit about this one on the lineup there. Winston scored 46.1, which is mind-boggling. 46 points, pretty good, not bad. You'll take it. But Winston had 30 completions, 400 yards, and he only got you 46 points. Like, that should be an 80-point score if you are having 30 completions and 400 yards, because that is, another 25 points? That should be 55 just from there. So you should be at least in the 60s or 70s there, something like that. But 5 interceptions, I see. I believe he also had a fumble. I want to say he had 6 turnovers, which cost you big. Fortunately, it didn't cost you in this matchup. Made no difference there, but certainly would have liked those extra points, I'm sure. Your receivers: Alshon Jeffrey, Kenny Galladay, and Mohamed Sanu. Jeffrey 23.6, Galladay 17, and Sanu about 6. Running backs, of course, McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. McCaffrey, low on yardage this week, but he still managed 2 touchdowns, 21.7, and then Cook, 13.5. Another sort of low yardage total for him as well, but he did manage a touchdown there for you. Another big factor, was talking about before, Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley. It's really, this year has been the Matt Ryan to Austin Hooper connection is the one that has been lighting up the scoreboard here. Hooper goes for another 25.5 points this week, over 100 yards and a touchdown. Let's take a quick look at Austin Hooper's box score. 16, 7, 24, 22, 13, and 25. So he has been on fire this year. Probably, I gotta imagine he's probably the number 1 tight end in the league this year in terms of fantasy scoring. I'm not sure who else would be higher, but if he's not number 1, he's got to be top 2 or 3, that is for sure. Then in the flex, we had Derrick Henry only go for 4.5 points. Lutz about 7 or 8, your kicker there, and then you went with the Steelers defense at LA Chargers. Looks pretty good. They had a couple turnovers. They scored a touchdown. Gave up a lot of garbage time yards there towards the end, but looks like Yahoo says 22. Looks like we must have bumped you up to about 35 or so for Pittsburgh's defense. So good performance from them. Good performance for most of your lineup here. Said more than enough to get past Darkwing Jut this week, who unfortunately for him went with Jared Goff. If he had gone with Carson Wentz, looks like it would have been about a 37-point difference here. So you still would have lost if you had gone with Wentz, but I think at Minnesota, that was a tough call. Goff, though, it looks like the San Francisco defense is going to be something to reckon with as the season goes along here. And Jared Goff was completely miserable in this matchup. Again, I think I mentioned it before, as was with Robert Woods, I think, as was basically the entire Rams defense, or offense, I'm sorry, just completely crumbled in this game. Not sure what happened. Goff looks like 13 completions, only 78 yards, a fumble lost. He actually only got you 15 points this week. Your receivers, Beckham Jr., DJ Moore, and Mike Evans, pretty good here. 16, 15.5, and 20.5. Running backs, Carlos Hyde, Tevin Coleman, 21 and 14 respectively. Evan Ingram still hurt. Had to go with pick up a tight end, and you went with Eifert. He only got you 3.5. In the flex, Kerryon Johnson, 14 points. Your kicker, Maher from Dallas, I believe Yahoo says 13. We actually got to jump it up, I think, closer to 15 or 16, because I think he kicked a 62-yard field goal, which Yahoo doesn't go into sixes. It only goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, obviously. It doesn't account for 60-yard field goals. So we had to bump up, basically, any kind of 50-yard field goal on here would be recorded as 5 points. Since it was 62, we had to bump you up an extra 1.2 points there. So, yeah, Maher did pretty good for you, about 15 or so points. And then the Rams defense, again, didn't do too well. Looks like they had a couple turnovers. I'm not sure how the yardage went, but your score is actually only about 1.5 points higher. So from what Yahoo says, so 14 is what it says here, and I'm guessing that must have been the actual score for the Rams defense there. And I think Maher is the reason that your points got tacked up just a little bit there. Yeah, so unfortunately, said pretty decent scores there for Darkwing Jut. His receivers and his running backs definitely came through this week, even though so you would have liked a little bit more, but high teens, 20s, low 20s, you'll take that most often than not. But unfortunately for you, said Goff let you down. No Ingram this week, and the Rams defense let you down a little bit there. So, unfortunately for Darkwing Jut, he drops to 1-5. He is actually now in the basement at 12th place, while Hillbillies on PCP, they are now 4-2, and they are in 3rd place. All right. Which matchup should we do next? We got 3 left. We'll save the 2 more exciting ones for last. How about that? And go with Disco versus In the Juju Hole. Has already changed his name after a trade earlier today. I'll take a look at that perhaps a little bit later on. But anyway, this matchup, the currently named DJs for Everybody, gets the win here over Disco. 178.9 to 152.85 for Disco there. For In the Juju Hole, let's see, Tom Brady, 58.5 points. Juju, 1.5 points. Diggs was the big factor here, though. He went for 46.5 points. 3 touchdowns, over 150 yards receiving. Let's see, Mecole Hardman, other wide receiver, he went for 8.5. Philip Lindsay, 15.5. You picked up Hilleman, I believe is his name, John Hilleman. He was the 3rd string running back for the New York Giants. What was his name? Gallman. He was out, so you put him on your bench. Then you have Barkley on your bench. You got Gallman on your bench, and you picked up the 3rd string running back there for the Giants, hoping to get some good score from him. Unfortunately, he only got you 3.5 points. He lost a fumble, and I believe the Giants actually got rid of him a day or 2 after that game, which was I think it was on Thursday night there, huh? Anyway, tight end Delaney Walker, 7.5. In the flex here, you went with Jamal Williams. I think he surprised pretty much all of us by going over 100 yards rushing. Caught a touchdown. He had 26.5 points. Boswell, your kicker, about 6 or so. Kansas City Chiefs defense. Yahoo says 9. I believe it actually must have been 6. I'm going to guess because they lost, gave up a lot of points and yards there. Because Yahoo's total for you is actually higher than what your actual score is. So they must have actually had a score of 6, I'm going to guess. But fortunately for you, it was enough to get past Disco this week. Let's see, you went in. Actually, we went into Monday night with a lot of players yet to go. In the Juju hole, had a score of, let's see, 152.3, something like that. And Disco had 84.5, something like that. So actually 152.3. If in the Juju hole had been finished, had no more players left to go, Disco would have, as you can tell, squeaked out a victory here by a very narrow margin of half a point or so. But unfortunately, for you, said you had Jamal Williams, who surprisingly had a big game there. And it was enough to keep you comfortably ahead in this matchup. So yeah, we did Juju hole. Let's take a look at Disco. So he had Aaron Rodgers on Monday night. He had Marvin Jones on Monday night. And did he have anybody else? Oh, he had Prater, the kicker from the Lions, who might have been his team's MVP this week, trying to keep Disco in it with his foot. Let's see. Aaron Rodgers, 44. Your receivers, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, and Marvin Jones Jr. As we know, you traded away Julio Jones and David Johnson. To Gags, you acquired Cooper Kupp and Le'Veon Bell and Marvin Jones. And those guys pretty much combined to get you about 20 points from those 3 guys. So pretty disappointing there, I would guess. Kupp, 5.5 points. Godwin, another big game for him. No touchdowns, but he had 10 catches, 150 yards, 28.1 points. Marvin Jones, the newly acquired Marvin Jones, only 3.5. Mixon, only 6. Damian Williams, 9 points. You picked up Fant from Denver as a tight end this week because Waller the Baller, he was out on a bye. And let's see, Fant got you 3.5 points. I think Justin was in the same kind of spot where his tight end was hurt and couldn't play. So he picked up Eifert. And I think I, at some point, said to him, it's almost not, is it going to be, with the tight ends that are available on the waiver wire and the points that they might get you, it's almost not even worth wasting a transaction or two picking one of these up and dropping one of these guys for the points that are going to get you is not going to be enough to make a significant, have a significant effect on the outcome of your matchup. And unfortunately for both Disco and Darkwing Jut this week, that kind of ended up being the case. You picked up these guys. You could have just started nobody or started the injured guys, and the result still would have been the same. We have saved yourself a transaction or two. But anyway, it's easy to sit here, of course, and say that now. Anything could have happened. Then, so in the flex, newly acquired again, Le'Veon Bell, 12.5 points. Prater, Yahoo says 19. I think he was actually closer to 21 or so. He had a bunch of field goals in this game. At least 5, it looks like. Because I think they scored 1 touchdown, right? Did they score any touchdowns? The Lions, did they score any touchdowns in that game? They must have had 1. Because 5 field goals would get you 15 points there. So yeah, they must have had 1 touchdown. Who was it? Was it Kerryon Johnson, I think? Did he have a rushing touchdown there? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Prater got you about 21 points there. And then the Minnesota Vikings defense, pretty good game from them against Philadelphia. I see a couple turnovers, not too many points allowed. Yahoo says 17. It must have been right around that, or 20. I think it was 20 if I remember correctly. And we only bumped your score up a couple of points there. It's only 4 or so points higher than what Yahoo says there. But unfortunately for Disco, he needed a win this week to not drop to 1-5, but he couldn't get it. He is 1-5. He's just above Darkwing Jut in 11th place, while in the Juju Hole. Changes his name, changes his team to DJs for Everybody. He moves up to 4-2, and he is in 6th place. All right, next we had an interesting matchup, to say the least. Possum Magic going up against the Dub C Hooligans, who, Possum Magic, it looked going into this week that he was barely going to be able to cobble together a starting lineup. His only tight end was Hunter Henry, who I wasn't even sure was back healthy enough to play. Boy, was I wrong on that. And he, I believe, picked up the Redskins defense several weeks ago in preparation for this moment that they were going to be playing the Dolphins, which pretty much any defense you want to have going up against them, if you can manage it. It ended up being enough. I think Possum Magic ended up trading for a quarterback right before on Saturday or right before the game on Sunday. He wasn't able to pick him up off of the free agent wire there, but he traded Disco, Disco had just picked him up. Sam Darnold said Possum Magic only had $10 of fab money to spend. He put out the bid, but Disco outbid by only $5 there. I think he won. Disco picked him up with a $15 bid and turned him right around and traded him to Possum Magic for David Montgomery. We'll see, I think, Brissett. So you're probably going to be rolling with Darnold, I'm going to guess, from here on out. So you traded away your former starting quarterback there. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, surprisingly, I don't think they even really talked about Tree's team in the podcast last week, did they? They kind of just glossed over it and gave his team pretty much called them a dumpster fire, and said that his team wasn't even worth talking about. Like they were just throwing in the towel, barely able to put a lineup together. However, it's in the name, Possum Magic. He pulls some magic out of his possum ass this week and gets the victory over the Dub C Hooligans. Final score, 189 to 181.8. Wow, great matchup. I think it came down, I believe Kevin was done. The Dub C Hooligans were finished after the 4 o'clock games. And Hunter Henry, Sunday night, he was the difference maker here. I don't think none of you had anyone on Monday night, because Kevin wanted me to do his score there going into Sunday night to see what Hunter Henry needed. And I had not factored in the score there for the Redskins defense or things like that. I just had changed Kevin's score. I think he thought for a minute that he had pulled out the victory until we forgot to factor in that the Redskins defense score was not factored in yet. But yeah, again, 8-point difference here. The key was huge. Barely, not even maybe a 7.5 point, not even 7.5 difference here. Hunter Henry catching that second touchdown. I believe that was one of the last plays of the game that the Chargers had. Because then at the end of the game, I think Henry got that second touchdown, and then at the very end, the Chargers were backed up to like their own goal line. Can't even remember for sure if Phillip Rivers completed any passes before throwing that interception there. So yeah, I think it might have been Hunter Henry's last catch of the game that put Possum Magic over the top, and pulls out an impressive, not gonna lie, surprising, but impressive nonetheless victory, and keeps him from falling to 1-5 and being on standings wise on life support here. So let's finally stop ranting about it and take a look at the actual scores and see what happened in this matchup. Darnold 48, D.D. Westbrook 8.5, Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, 26 points, 2 touchdowns, and 100 yards for him on only 4 catches. Heavily invested in this Redskins-Dolphins game was Possum Magic, as he picked up and played Devontae Parker, who's I think he scored a touchdown at the very. I think it was the last play of the game, because this touchdown was the one in which they followed up with a 2-point conversion attempt, which failed. Instead of going for the tie, they went for the win, didn't get it. And then that was the very end of the game there. Let's see. Running backs, Chris Thompson and Jordan Howard. 4 points for Thompson, 5 points for Howard. Again, Hunter Henry, his score was actually an even 30 points. 8 catches, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Looks like he is back healthy. We'll see how long he can stay healthy, because as everyone I'm sure is well aware, this guy has a long history of getting hurt. When he's on the field, he is gold. He is excellent, fantasy wise, but he is extreme. He's probably one of the riskiest plays that there is at the tight end position. You're gonna love him when he's doing good, and then it's just a matter of how long until he breaks your heart with an injury there. But I don't wish any injuries on him. I'd love to see him flourish and have a great career and not get hurt. That guy's been through a ton of crap in the first couple years of his career. Enough already. Hopefully, I would personally, of course, I would love nothing more to see Hunter Henry come through these past couple years of being injury plagued, and perhaps put together a few solid, healthy seasons there. So good luck to him on that. However, if history is any indication, I would not feel too comfortable about that. But yeah, hopefully it's the best for him. Would like to see him recover and continue to stay healthy and be successful there. It'd be nice to see. Except whenever I play Possum Magic, of course. Adrian Peterson in the flex, 18.5 points. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4. Half of your starting lineup were players in the Redskins-Dolphins game. Lambeau was your kicker. He got you about 6 points. And then the Redskins defense, Yahoo says 17. Looks like we bumped your total about 15 points or so. So the Redskins defense must have actually scored about 30, 32, 33, something like that. So yeah, Darnold, McLaurin, Hunter Henry, Adrian Peterson, Redskins defense, pretty much were enough. So the rest of you guys got single-digit scores there. They carried you through, enough to get past the Dub C Hooligans this week. Let's take a look at their lineup. Lamar Jackson, 57 points. Wide receivers, Tyler Lockett, Larry Fitzgerald, and DJ Chark, 12.8, 12.9, and 7.3 respectively. Perhaps Chark is going to be, perhaps he's going to cool off this year now that you've finally decided to put him in your starting lineup there. It's going to be a tricky. So you acquired a bunch of wide receivers. I think you were looking for another running back in a trade. You only have one trade left, as I think we've already discussed. So you're going to have to make the best of that when and where you decide to make that move of your final trade. We'll see what happens. But yeah, if I were you, I would definitely try to find a solid third running back there to plug into your lineup every week, instead of having to play have a merry-go-round, carousel, whatever you want to call it, of your wide receiver core there, changing it up. Having to change it up every single week and trying to guess who's going to have the most successful game. That's a recipe for stress and anxiety. And I'm pretty sure, Kevin, you got enough in your life. I'm pretty sure you don't need any more than you already have. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just guessing that you have enough already. Ingram and Jones, your running backs, 15.5 and 7. Tight end, Ertz, 7.5. Josh Gordon in the flex, I think he got hurt in this game. He only had one catch, 7 yards, 1.7. Kicker was Elliott from the Eagles. I wasn't sure at first, but I believe it was factored in by Yahoo. He threw an interception, so he actually lost you 3 points. Yahoo, it still says 8, but yeah, he had a couple field goals. I see that the one INT is actually labeled here now, in next to his name there. So yeah, he would have gotten you about 11 or 12 points, but he threw an interception there. And then again, the New England Patriots defense, another big game for them. Yahoo says 34. It must have been about, I think we talked about it before because I missed one of the stats there. I think the fumble recovery or something. They must have, I think it was like 49 or 52, something like right around 50 there for you. Yeah. Said this was a close matchup, kind of surprising outcome, but yeah, for Dub C Hooligans, just taking a look at it, of course, you have that fluky interception being thrown by Elliott. That could have been 3 extra points. That would boost you to 184. Josh Gordon doesn't do one catch and get hurt. Maybe this matchup goes a different way. Or if you had started either Mike Williams or Curtis Samuel on your bench over DJ Chark there. Let's see. Williams looks like it would be about a 5-point difference there. So actually, Mike Williams would not have mattered, but Curtis Samuel was sitting on your bench there with a score that could have gotten you the win here. But doesn't matter because you make the best decisions you can going into the matchup, and the chips fall where they may. Unfortunately for Dub C, put up a good score. A lot of people are familiar with your pain this week as you put up a good score and get a loss, but you just got to kind of tip your hat to Possum Magic as his team really seemed like they were on the ropes here, maybe left for dead like a roadkill possum, but yeah, they stepped up this week, and I think safe to say surprised everyone, probably even surprised Tree Size himself here, getting that win. Dub C Hooligans with that loss, he moves to 3-3. He's in 7th place, while Possum Magic moves up to 2-4. He is in 10th place. All right, and then finally the matchup is Springfield Isotopes versus From Gags to Riches. As you may have guessed from the beginning of the recap here, little hurt by Johnny Cash going out from Aaron Jones to me, I'm pretty sure, that because he definitely made me hurt after this matchup. Final score, From Gags to Riches, 137.2 to Springfield Isotopes, 137.05. It's just painful to say those numbers. Yeah, but I mean, 2 pitiful scores, the 2 lowest scores of the week. We had played anybody else except each other. It was an easy loss. But we went against each other, and it came down to the very last drive of the game. Aaron Jones was in there, came close, but he was taken out at the end in favor of Jamal Williams on the second half of their final field goal game-winning drive there. Which was extremely frustrating to watch. But anyway, let's get into the lineups here from Gags to Riches. He had Phillip Rivers go for 45, Jarvis Landry, Julio Jones, and Paul Richardson Jr. Traded away. Who did you trade? Cooper Kupp and Le'Veon Bell. To Disco, you acquired Julio and David Johnson, and they did what you needed them to, because this matchup actually would not have been close, surprisingly enough, if you had still been playing Cooper Kupp, Le'Veon. I don't think Le'Veon Bell. I don't know. Yeah, if you had played Kupp, Le'Veon Bell, and who else did Marvin Jones? I'm assuming would have been your 3 receivers. Would have been Kupp, Jones, and Landry there, and then Le'Veon. Actually, so yeah, you probably would not have won this matchup. Anyway, thanks, Disco. Anyway, yeah, Landry 6.5, Julio 18.8, and then Richardson actually scored 0, surprisingly enough. Then again, your running backs, David Johnson, you went with Latavius Murray, knowing that Kamara was playing hurt. It was a good move there. You had other choices. Said Gurley was out. McCoy, you had to go between choice between LaShawn McCoy and Latavius Murray. You went with Murray, and fortunately for you, he was the better play, because if you had gone with LaShawn McCoy, who I think was in your starting lineup, I'm not exactly certain, but I think he was there at least until Saturday, maybe Sunday morning, last minute change to your lineup there. Perhaps the thing that ultimately resulted in getting the win here, going with the right choice there. David Johnson 28.2 and Murray 10.9. Kelsey 9.8. In the flex, Deebo Samuel 4.9. Zerline, your kicker, only 1 PAT. Again, an effect of the Rams defense, or why do I keep saying Rams defense? Rams offense completely collapsing there. He got you 1. And finally, you picked up and played the Miami Dolphins defense. They lost the game. Yahoo says 6, but I believe the actual total was 12. And I think it was the same score that the Chargers defense ended up with here. But yeah, enough to squeak past the Springfield Isotopes by the slimmest of margins. Let's take a look at the Isotopes here. Patrick Mahomes, 39.55. And just real quick here, I went back and looked, I think I mentioned it on the Line app real quick. Actually went through, looked at this year's game log, went through last year's game log real quick. Said just a quick gripe here on my behalf here. I'll squeeze them in real quick here, but this was the first week, so they lost by 0.15. I don't know about Patrick Mahomes. I think he started a game in week 17 of 2017, right? Because then last year was when he became the full-time starter. Had him last year and now again this year. So in 1.5 seasons, approximately, Patrick Mahomes never scored lower than 40. Not once did he score lower than 40 points. What does he score this week? 39.5. So that's just very frustrating. As you can imagine, you guys, I know you're enjoying it. Wide receivers, Edelman, Gallup, and Tyreek Hill. Edelman, 20.5. Gallup, 8.8. And Tyreek Hill, 2 touchdowns, 25 points from him. And finally getting him back this year. Aaron Jones and Malcolm Brown, the running backs, 8 and 4 respectively. As we know, Aaron Jones lost a fumble there, dropped what could have been a touchdown. I think it was like a 30-yard touchdown pass. He was wide open, just bounced off his hands, and ended up being on the sideline a lot of the rest of that game. But yeah, so he was not. He only needed 2 more yards. Couldn't do it. And then, of course, Malcolm Brown, no Gurley this week. Thought, oh man, I know it's going to be a tough defense though against San Francisco, but he's going to be the main running back for the Rams offense. You got to get him in here and play them. I said he only ended up with 4 points, 40 rushing yards, no catches or anything. And I remember very vividly keeping an eye on the Rams game as I believe their first drive of the game, the Rams went right down the field. I actually don't think they threw a pass. They ran every single play. After the first drive of the game, Malcolm Brown had, 40 yards. I think he had 5 rushes for 40 yards, so he was running at an 8 yard at a time clip there. It was either 5 rushes for 40 or 8 for 40. I can't remember. But I want to say it was 5 for 40. So yeah, right off the bat, 40 yards on the first drive of the game. And I'm watching. And I'm watching. And I'm watching. Still 40. Still 40. 41. 42. 41. 39. 40. Like back. Like unbelievable. The rest of the game. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Ugh. All right. Tight end, Vance McDonald, only 1.5 points there. Put him in this week. Thought that the Steelers with the backup third-string quarterback there really thought in the passing game they would do short, high percentage passes there. Vance would have a chance to catch a couple there. Unfortunately for me, everything that could have gone wrong for me in that Chargers-Steelers game went wrong as the Steelers jumped out to a lead off of turnovers pretty much right away. A big lead, and they didn't really need to throw the ball much the rest of the way. And so, yeah, which definitely didn't help, said with the Steelers jumping out to a big lead there. Having Melvin Gordon in the flex because then he pretty much didn't carry the ball at all because they were already behind by several touchdowns. He only got 7.8. Kicker, Zane Gonzalez, about 10 points there. And then again, the Chargers defense fell behind by a couple touchdowns real fast in that game. They ended up getting a turnover. Final score was 12 points there. So yeah, pretty much everything that could have gone wrong in the Sunday, for me at least, in the Sunday night game and the Monday night game, everything went. I was pretty confident, feeling pretty good after the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games. I'll admit, things seemed pretty shaped up to be pretty good for me, considering said Gags had Phillip Rivers, but I had McDonald, Gordon, Chargers defense, and Aaron Jones still. So basically 4-on-1. But yeah, not enough to get it done this week. Still praying for maybe some kind of stat correction to go my way, but usually those are like only unless a quarterback gets a extra completion somewhere. If you look at stat corrections, it's usually only a yard here, a yard there. So I would imagine if there's somehow a change, it would only be a point, like a 0.1 or maybe a 0.05 if it's a passing yard there or something like that. So not confident, not holding my breath, waiting for anything like that. Just taking the defeat. Gags to Riches moves up to 4-2. He's in second place, while the Springfield Isotopes drop to 3-3. They are in 8th place. I think that's right where I've been for the past couple of weeks. Win or lose, right there in 8th place. Anyway, let's take a look at, I think that is it for, so before I jump ahead and take a quick peek at week 7, we had the knockout pool from Gags to Riches is eliminated this week. So yeah, 6 weeks in, 6 weeks left. That means, so we're 6 weeks in, and there's 12 of us, so that means half of us are out, half of us are still in. I'm sure other people will ask, who don't really get this far in the video or even watch at all, but I'm pretty sure the people who are still in know who they are. But real quick, if you want me to tell you, the answers are still in the knockout pool. Yinzer Jags, Disco, Dub C Hooligans, Hillbillies on PCP, Mighty Midgets, and Shawshank Athletics. Basically, if you are in the top half of the standings, you are probably still in. Although Yinzer Jags and Disco representing the bottom half there. Alright, so I think there's really nothing else to cover here. Take a quick peek at week 7 and the matchups here. Looking at the standings here, I think everybody is kind of surprised and impressed. We have a 6-way tie for first place. We have 6 teams are all 4-2 right now. 2 teams are 3-3, 2 teams are 2-4, and 2 teams are 1-5. So interesting how the standings have shaped up this week, early so far this year. Let's see. I don't know that we've ever had 6 teams at 4-2, all tied for first, technically tied for first place after 6 weeks. Kind of interesting. It's usually much more jumbled. There's usually a team or two really pulling away the first couple weeks. Nobody's really pulled away yet. Some teams are starting to. They've gotten some wins here, got advantageous matchups coming up. Said really, whoever gets you really to make the playoffs. Of course, you need almost always you're going to need at least 7 wins. So the race to 7 is on. Let's take a look at week 7. And of all, unfortunately for us in the bottom half of the standings, all the teams that are 4-2 this week, we only have one matchup that features them going head to head. That is Hillbillies versus 10 XL Entries. So one of them will definitely get to 5 wins. We'll see how it goes. Then of the other 4-2 teams, we've got Shawshank going against Disco. We have Gags to Riches going against Dub C. We have DJs for Everybody, formerly in the Juju Hole, going up against Darkwing Jut. And then we have Mighty Midgets going up against Possum Magic. Then we have, the other matchup is Springfield Isotopes going up against Yinzer Jags. So, yeah, a lot of these teams that are 4-2 probably feeling pretty good about going to 5-2. So they've lucked out this week and are playing a lot of the teams near the bottom of the standings. However, some of these teams who are at the bottom, you still got to look out for, I would think, as Possum Magic definitely proved to us last week. Disco, I think, still putting together a solid lineup week to week. They're going to be a team to still look out for, even though said at 1-5, things are not looking good for him. Looks like let's see, Dub C is actually kind of favored over Gags to Riches right now, according to Yahoo. Yeah. So again, these guys who are all 4-2 this week probably feeling pretty good about their matchups, getting to 5-2. But you cannot be too careful because, as we know, any given Sunday, anything can happen. Your team could look great on paper and just completely tank and get you a loss in a week where you need to get a win. Yeah. So we'll see if most of these teams, how many of them, continue to pull ahead away from the lower half of the guys in the lower half of the standings here. And if anyone like Dub C, Isotopes, Yinzer Jags, Possum Magic, if any of them are able to, well, obviously Isotopes or Yinzer Jags will get a win this week going against each other and keep their hopes for a playoff spot alive here. But yeah, we'll see if those guys at the top can pull away or if the guys in the bottom half there can keep their seasons going and maybe knock those guys near the top down a peg or two there. So going to be another fun week as it always is. Looking forward to seeing what happens. Another good matchup, another tough matchup for me. Going to be fun to see what happens here across the league. We're really starting to get into bye weeks. Going to be problems for people as we go forward. See how they're able to manage those. I don't think we've had too many significant bye weeks so far, but here as we get into week 6, week 7, the byes go through week 12, I believe. So we're going to get into the time where a lot of big players are going to be missing, having their weeks off here. So it's going to be fun, as always, to see what happens. So I think that's pretty much it. I hope that no one suffers any significant injuries this week. We all put up good scores, and the matchups are good and close, and no big blowouts. Everyone performs up to their potential this week, and said again, hope for no significant injuries there to anyone's team. And we'll have another good week here in Tonto's demise. So yeah, I believe that's pretty much it for week 6 here. we'll see what happens in week 7. We'll take a listen to the podcast, see what they have to say, and we will be back here to recap week 7 next week. So, all right, guys, again, as always, whether you are watching, listening, or whatever it is that you do, thanks, and we will see you back again here next week. All right, guys, thank you. Bye.